Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta
Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta
So we are continuing with Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila, chapter number 3, verse number 16. ऐश्वर्य जानीते सब जगत मिश्रिता ऐश्वर्य Sithila Preme Nahi Mora Prita. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Knowing my opulences, the whole world looks upon me with awe and veneration. But devotion made feeble by such reverence does not attract me. Purport. After his appearance, Lord Krishna thought that he had not distributed the transcendental personal dealings with his devotees in Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. One may understand the science of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from the Vedic literatures and thus become a devotee of the Lord and worship Him within the regulative principles described in the scriptures, but one will not know in this way how Krishna is served by the residents of Rajabhumi. One cannot understand the dealings of the Lord in Vrindavan simply by executing the ritualistic regulative principles mentioned in the scriptures. By following scriptural injunctions, one may enhance his appreciation for the glories of the Lord, but there is no chance for one to enter into personal dealings with him. Giving too much attention to understanding the exalted glories of the Lord reduces the chance of one's entering into personal loving affairs with the Lord. To reach the principles of such loving dealings, the Lord decided to appear as Lord Chaitanya. Om Jnana Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Translation once again. Knowing my opulences, the whole world looks upon me with awe and veneration. But devotion made feeble by such reverence does not attract me. Very, very important verse. So, there are two different kinds of devotees. Some who look at Krishna with awe and reverence, and others who are like the Vrajavasis who do not consider Krishna as the Supreme Lord, but they have those loving relationships with him. But here he's saying, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is saying that those who look upon Krishna with awe and reverence, he adds on to that that their devotion can be made weak by reverence. That does not attract Krishna at all. I had heard a lecture by Gudakesh Prabhu many, many years ago in Mumbai, and he was relating a story which connects with this verse. He said one time, one cowherd boy who was in Goloka Vrindavan was playing with the Lord, like they played in Vrindavan, with the ball or, climbing on each other or fighting or wrestling or whatever. So they were playing with the ball, throwing at a ball at each other and trying to catch and get some points. One of the cowherd boys, he threw it so far that it left Goloka Vrindavan and it landed in Vishnu Loka. So everyone said, now it's your turn. You got to go and get the ball because you're the one who threw it there. So he went, and as soon as he reached Vishnu Loka, He was shocked because there was Lord Vishnu, and there were all these devotees sitting in awe and reverence, or whatever you call it, reverence, right? Reverence, veneration. I'm mixing veneration and reverence together. In awe and reverence, like everyone. And he was shocked. He's like, what's wrong with these people? We have so much fun in Goloka. We are climbing on Krishna, we are hitting him, we are throwing him, we are wrestling with him. And here they are all just closing their eyes and sitting. He didn't like it at all. And then he went to Lord Vishnu and he hit him and he said, come on, what are you doing? We got to play. Then he realized, oh, this is different. This is Vishnu Loka, where there is only awe and reverence. There is no playful mood. And then he came back to Goloka and he was so grateful that he was in Goloka, that he could play with Krishna. He could have that loving relationship. So, from this, we can understand that Krishna also is saying, but devotion made feeble by such reverence does not attract me. Which means, as Prabhupada explains, that we can love Krishna in one of those transcendental rasas. He does not include Shantaras because it's neutral, right? Madhurya, Vatsalya, Dasya, and Sakhya. These are the four rasas he talks about. So here it says that he wanted to come down. Krishna wanted to come down to this material world. Why? Because he wanted to teach us loving devotional service, which was missing. So, Krishna, he thought that this is a necessity, that I need to distribute this process by which everyone can have a loving relationship with him. And this devotional service is, I remember when in Mumbai, I don't know if I mentioned this before, I had just started giving lectures in Mumbai. It was new for me. And one of the God brothers was sitting in the audience and he asked me, in what rasa are you? He asked me a question. I have just started Krishna consciousness, just started reading Bhagavad Gita, just started speaking, and he asked me, in what rasa are you? I said, Shanta, because I had not realized any rasa. I didn't know. So I said, Shanta. He said, Shanta? He was shocked that Shanta. So that means that is not considered as a rasa because you're still neutral in that neutral state, neutral rasa. So here Krishna decided to come down as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu so that he could teach us how to deal with Krishna in loving relationship. Prabhupada says that here in this material world, we have forgotten our relationship with Krishna. We are so engrossed in enjoying this material world, enjoying the senses, and letting the mind and senses run anywhere. But it is important that this knowledge should reach us. So he, through the medium of Srila Prabhupada, of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came 540 years ago, and then in the Parampara, this knowledge was coming down, and Srila Prabhupada, he gave us a very compact process. That process was that we follow the regulative principles, but we don't become fanatic about it, right? Sometimes we see, I remember I had gone to someone's house for some program which was a chapan bhog. Yes, it was a chapan bhog program. And there was this one devotee who was very much into the rules and regulations, which is really good, but we should know what is the purpose of that chapan bhog. The purpose is to offer those offerings with love and devotion, not that we just get so fanatic about the rules. Oh, the tulasi should be kept like this, each one should have a tulasi and it should be facing this way, and that all are rules which are not really necessary. What Krishna wants is our love and devotion. He's not hungry for our food, but he's looking for love. So follow all the regulative principles, but just following regulative principles in this verse, and Purport Prabhupada says, one cannot guarantee that loving relationship that the Vrajavasis have for Krishna. That guarantee is not there. Now, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is talking about difference between devotion of Brajavasis and those who worship Krishna with following just rules and regulations. Now, the scriptures are given to us so that we can get that knowledge and we can put that into practice. But the scriptures are also there that we take on knowledge and then we learn to appreciate Krishna. Appreciate, because say if someone tells me, so and so, like my mother says, there is this boy and I want you to get married to him. And then what will be the first question I will have? I want to know about him. What is his name? Where does he live? Where does he work? Of course, nowadays they ask what is the paycheck, how much bank balance is there? Do they own a house? How many cars do they have? Oh, do they have a green card? Right? Things like that. So that knowledge is there, but that is not sufficient to have a personal dealing with the Supreme Lord. To be able to come to the level of the loving devotion of Brajavasis, we need complete surrender. And complete surrender is what is going to please Krishna. Of course, we have learned that pleasing the spiritual master will automatically please Krishna. And what does the spiritual master ask us to do? Exactly the same, what the whole parampara is telling us to do. Chant attentively, read Srila Prabhupada's books, associate with devotees, do some service, and preach. So these are the standard instructions that are given by the spiritual master also. Now, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, reading too much or hearing too much is not a guarantee to come to the level of loving devotionals. So powerful, right? Reading too much or hearing too much. Let me hear this also. Let me read this book also, that book also. That is not going to guarantee, because that is just absorption of knowledge. That is only jnana. But we need to change it to vijnana, realization. Just jnana is not sufficient, whether it is hearing or whether it is reading. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna decided to come down as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to show us what we need to do. Someone asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that why aren't you, discussing the, in Sanskrit, discussing all the Vedas or this or that. He said, no, my spiritual master said, you are a fool. You just chant. Just chant. Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Eva Kevalam, Kalau Nasteva, 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 Gatiranata. Just chant, chant, chant. But how? Attentively. Because if we just chant, 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 there will be little benefit. And Guru Maharaj says, but if we chant attentively, then we will get full benefit. And then what will happen? Everything will fall in place automatically. Just like Prahlad Maharaj has given us 9 processes. It starts with Shravanam. Once that Shravanam is attentive, and if you remember when we started Srimad Bhagavatam, in the very beginning, what was the qualification? Attentive hearing. When we hear attentively, then we will have a desire to chant. And when we have the desire to chant attentively, then smaranam will be automatic. Then everything else is going to fall in place. It's going to be automatic. So very important point is that Srila Prabhupada says that we must keep Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Trinadapi Sunichena verse hanging in our necks. It should be hanging. So it reminds us that we have to be more tolerant than a tree and more humble than a blade of grass. Respect everyone, but do not expect to get respect in return. So very important point is that we should respect anyone who is chanting Hare Krishna, anybody, whether it is one time, 10 times, every day, many years, whatever it is, we must. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he had asked Shivananda Sen's dog, he had a dog. So he asked Shivananda Sen's dog, he said, chant. And the dog started chanting. Dance. The dog started dancing, right? This is the power of that holy name. So anyone who chants is very, very dear to Krishna. So we must always keep aside the shortcomings of others, whatever we may see, keep them aside and just give respect to everyone who is chanting the Hare Krishna. Then it will be possible for us to give respect to everyone. What does Prabhupada say? Of course, then we become humble. What does Prabhupada say about humility? Very nicely, he explains. He said, humility means one is not anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others. Once again, one is not anxious, right? One is not anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others. So, this is what Prabhupada says it means humility. Let's go to the next verse, number 17. Excuse me. ऐश्वर्य ज्ञाने विधि भजन करिया वैकुंठा के याय चतुर्विध मुक्तिपाना. Translation. By performing such regulated devotional service in awe and veneration, one may go to Vaikuntha and attain the four kinds of liberation. So the information is given to us about what to expect in Vaikuntha. Vaikuntha means, all the spiritual planets, but Goloka Vrindavan is the topmost spiritual planet, topmost Vaikuntha. So what will be the result? One will worship Krishna in awe and reverence, but at the same time will also attain four kinds of liberation. Now these four kinds of liberation are mentioned in the next verse, number 18. Shashti sarupya ara samepya salokya saujya sayujya nanlaya bhakta layate brahma aikya. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. These liberations are shashti, or achieving opulences equal to those of the Lord, sarupya, or having a form the same as the Lord's, samipya, or living as a personal associate of the Lord, and salokya, or living on a Vaikuntha planet. Devotees never accept sayujya, however, since that is oneness with Brahman. Purport. Those engaged in devotional service according to the ritualistic principles mentioned in the scriptures attain these different kinds of liberation. But although such devotees can attain sarshti, sarupya, samipya, and salokya, they are not concerned with these liberations. For such devotees are satisfied only in rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord. The fifth kind of liberation, sayujya, is never accepted even by devotees who perform only ritualistic worship. To attain sayujya, or merging into the Brahman effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the aspiration of the impersonalists. A devotee never cares for sayujya liberation. So, four kinds of liberations. Excuse me. So Sarshti is same opulence like the Lord in Vaikuntha. Sarupya is the same form as the Lord. Samipya, personal associate of Lord, and Salokya is living in Vaikuntha planet. Devotees do not accept Sayujya, which is merging into the Brahman effulgence of the Lord. So important to understand what kind of devotional service are we performing. Based on that, there will be a result, there will be a consequence of that. So those so those who are performing devotional service according to the ritualistic principles, what happens, their focus is too much on those regulative principles only. Oh, I need to do this, I have to run the agarbatti 5 times, 3 times, 2 times, and then I have to do this. These are all ritualistic activities. So that if there is too much focus on regulative principles, then excuse me, too much allergies. So then the do's and don'ts, that will somehow or the other make the devotee a fanatic, only absorbed or meditating only in ritualistic regulative principles. But the devotees, they can attain a different kind of liberation. They can attain all these four kinds of liberations which just now it is mentioned, but they are not interested, right? They are not, they only want to engage in loving devotional service of the Supreme Lord. They just want to please Krishna, just like the gopis. What was, remember when some cowherd boys went to the gopis and said Krishna has a headache, severe headache, and the solution is the dust of the, yes, dust of the feet of devotees. No one wanted to give, but devotees instantly. And they were told, they were told that if you do that, you will go to hell. How can you give your dust that can be put on Krishna's forehead? They said, we don't mind going to hell as long as Krishna's headache is gone. You see? So, devotees, they are not interested in liberation also. All they want is to satisfy and please the Supreme Lord. That is their goal. Prabhupada says that merging into Brahman effulgence is not attractive to the devotees. That is attractive to impersonalists. Whereas the devotees, what are they? They are personalists. They have full faith in the personal form of the Supreme Lord. Next verse. Yuga dharma pravartaimo nama sankirtana chari bhava bhakti diya nachamo bhuvana. Translation. I shall personally inaugurate the religion of the age, Nam Sankirtana, the congregational chanting of the holy name. I shall make the world dance in ecstasy, realizing the four mellows of loving devotional service. Personally, this is another reference. We can see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself, and he personally came down to this material world in Kali Yuga only to spread Sankirtana movement, only to spread the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. And emphasis is given on chanting. We have heard many times, Kriteya Dhyayato Vishnu, Tretayam Yajatam. There are different processes in each yuga for realizing the Supreme Lord. And in Kali Yuga, it is Kalautad Hari Kirtana. Only by chanting can we deliver ourselves from this Kali Yuga. So Krishna, he came as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just to show us how to chant and dance. He even made the animals chant and dance. What was that forest? Jharikand forest. If we go to Jharikand forest and we chant and dance, you think animals will chant and dance? They will eat us, exactly. They say, oh, here comes some nice food, good feast today, right? Excuse me. So, the devotees are only interested in chanting and dancing, and their goal is to somehow or the other revive their relationship with the Supreme Lord in any one of those four rasas. And that is why Srila Prabhupada gave us the strong morning program. How it's important to chant in the morning, to read, to hear, to associate with devotees, to do some seva, go to the temple, do some service. All these will make us strong in bhakti. And then, of course, it's important to evaluate ourselves. Not let the mind evaluate ourselves, because the mind will say, you're a pakka devotee, you're such a nice devotee, you're a wonderful devotee, you're doing awesome, you're doing. No, we need to sit down and evaluate. Now, one may say, how to evaluate ourselves? Yes, it's better that we ask someone else to evaluate our progress. If we are on a plateau, if we have started bhakti and we are staying on that same level, then that should be a red flag for us. And then we need to rectify that situation. The last verse for today, number 20. Apani karimo bhakta bhava angikare, apani achari bhakti sikhaimu sabare. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. I shall accept the role of a devotee and I shall teach devotional service by practicing it myself. That is why practice before you preach. Practice. So Krishna himself is saying, I will practice and then I will preach. Purport. When one associates with a pure devotee, he becomes so elevated that he does not aspire even for Shashti, Sarupya, Samipya, or Salokya, because he feels that such liberation is a kind of sense gratification. Pure devotees do not ask anything from the Lord for their personal benefit. Even if offered personal benefits, pure devotees do not accept them because their only desire is to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by transcendental loving service. No one but the Lord Himself can teach this highest form of devotional service. Therefore, when the Lord took the place of the incarnation of Kali Yuga to spread the glories of chanting Hare Krishna, the system of worship recommended in this age, he also distributed the process of devotional service performed on the platform of transcendental spontaneous love. To teach the highest principles of spiritual life, the Lord Himself appeared as a devotee in the form of Lord Chaitanya. Another reference that Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are one and the same. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself. And here we can see the scriptures are clearly giving us of past, what happened, what is happening now, and the future also, right? That what is expected in the future. Bhagavatam tells us that Lord Krishna will come as Kalki 427,000 years from now. So similarly, there are references that Krishna came as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu 540 years ago. So Shastras are giving us everything. And Krishna is so merciful. He's coming himself in the form of a devotee. What a big difference, right? If he comes as Lord, he can lord it over. But when he comes as a devotee, he cannot behave like he is the Lord, right? He has to behave like a devotee so that we can learn how devotees should behave or what should be their characteristics, how should they interact with others. So Krishna, being so merciful, he came to teach us by setting an example. And we've learned this in our day to day life. If we want to teach something to our children, what do the children expect? That we are following it too, right? We have to set an example so that the children will appreciate that example and follow that example. So that is the reason why Chaitanya, one of the reasons why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came as a devotee to teach us. And not only that, he wanted to practice what he preached. The best way to understand, say, supposing we are in association of devotees, how do we recognize if what is the level of those devotees? How? Very simple. Are they practicing what they are preaching? Right? If they are not practicing what they are preaching, then that is a red flag, right? But of course, it is not up to us to judge or to decide, but at least we should have some knowledge. And here God is saying, I will first practice, set an example, and then I will preach Harinam San Kirtana. So it is very easy to teach others when we ourselves are practicing what we are preaching, to be an example. Just like for the kids, the parents have to be an example. For students, the teacher in the school or college has to be an example. For a disciple, the spiritual master has to be an example, right? And also for the citizens, who?
Okay.
The king. Of course, now we don't have the king, but right? Who should be the one for the leader, right? The leader should set an example for the citizens, right? So that the citizens can follow. So it's important that we ourselves also become a role model if we are preaching, so that we set a good example. Now, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada, he's talking about the result of associating with pure devotees, right? When we associate with pure devotees, then there is no aspiration for these liberations. The devotees are not interested in any kind of liberation, right? When the devotee becomes pure, liberation comes to you and says, how can I serve you? This is what Prabhupada explains, right? So then the devotees, why are they not interested in liberation? Because those kinds of liberations are for sense gratification. This is what Srila Prabhupada is saying in the purport. And pure devotees are not interested. Their only aim is to please Krishna. That's it. And when Krishna is pleased, then that devotee is able to spread the glories. Now, say we take a book and we are talking to someone and we are preaching. If we are not really practicing, then that effect is not there, right? Yes, the devotee will, the other person will take the book and will read the book or whatever it is, but the effect comes from the purity of the devotee. So, pure devotees like Guru Maharaj, they travel from one place to another just to give this knowledge. Now, of course, since 1.5 years, travel is restricted, but at least on Zoom, those that preaching is still going on. Yesterday also, I was listening to Guru Maharaj's lecture from ISKCON Delhi. It was the appearance day of Mother Sita, right? A beautiful lecture on the Ramayana about Lord Ramachandra, Mother Sita, Lakshmana, Bharat. And so, even through Zoom, it is possible to spread the glories of the Supreme Lord, just like Guru Maharaj. He uses everything in the service of the Lord. When we give him donations over here, what does he do? He builds temples, right? Like Kurukshetra, Russia, build those temples, everything. Why? Because he knows this is how one can satisfy the Supreme Lord. And Krishna is just looking for pure, loving, devotional service. He's not looking at anything else. That loving devotional service should be unalloyed and uninterrupted, right? Anabhilashita shunya jnana karmadi anavritam. So, when we see these few verses that we read today, it gives us some hope that Krishna, he came 540 years ago and gave us a very simple method. Just chant and be happy. Just chant, chant, chant. But what happens? Chanting usually becomes a burden for us. Oh, 16 rounds again today? I just did them yesterday. And I did them day before yesterday also, right? Huh? And then once the 16 rounds are over, then, oh, done for the day, right? It becomes a burden. But just see the compassion of the Lord. He came just to give us an easy method. Imagine if we had to meditate, right? Say, supposing we live 100 years and the process for self realization is meditate 50 years. Would that be possible? 5 minutes also is difficult. Just close your eyes and sit for 5 minutes. You'll start changing your place. Your knees are hurting and you're moving and coughing like I'm coughing, right? Where is the meditation? Fire sacrifices. If we have to do fire sacrifice in the house, we think, oh, the alarm will go on. What is that called? Smoke detector will go on, right? There'll be so much dhua in the house. It'll be choking us. That all is not necessary at all we have to do is just chant. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach us how to chant and how to become a pure devotee of the Supreme Lord. It is a very simple process, and Prabhupada says if one is sincere and serious, then spontaneous love for Krishna will develop, it will manifest. There is no other formula. There's no such thing that if we chant X number of rounds at this time in this situation that we'll get spontaneous love of Krishna. No. And that will happen only by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, only if Krishna wants it. So then only it'll be possible. So this is what we have learned today in these verses. I'm going to stop here if anyone has any questions.